Questions about quarterbacks and a potential change not going anywhere.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into a special live edition of Locked On Auburn. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first or your second listen every day, as this is a bonus edition of the show. Hugh Freeze just spoke to the media where he tackled questions about personnel decisions, as well as Arkansas, as well as the receivers dropping passes. We'll get into all of that over the next few minutes. I think the question that's on most Auburn fans' mind, I think there's two. One is job security, and the other is quarterback. We'll start with quarterback. Obviously, he was asked, and he's been asked every presser for the last few weeks, and he'll probably be asked every presser for the foreseeable future until a change is made. Just in general about, okay, are you making or considering any personnel changes right now? And he started with center, with Connor Lew being injured, which we knew that's devastating. We'll see. We'll talk about some of the things he said about what they could do on the offensive line in a moment. But let's start with quarterback. And he talked about how, Ashton has been ready. They've been ready to put Ashton in the past few games, but he didn't really seem like any of the issues were on Jackson. And so he said in practice this week, both Jackson Arnold and Ashton Daniels are going to get plenty of reps with the ones to see who I guess steps up or make sure they're both ready. But then later he was asked a follow-up question. All right, is it assume that Jackson will start, or is it who has the better week of practice? And he said, well, I think it's safe to, we expect Jackson to start. And then he credited Jackson leading the offense down on the opening drives for touchdowns over the last few weeks. So take that for what it's worth, but I'd be surprised if Jackson Arnold did not start for Auburn on Saturday. And then he was asked about a comment he made at Tiger Talk saying, hey, at one point you said you wanted to redshirt Ashton Daniels. Does that change how you handle the quarterback situation for the remainder of the year? Because obviously he can play in 4 games. Auburn has more than 4 games remaining. And he quickly said, not anymore. Made it very clear that they want to win. They want to do the things that are best as far as winning this season, not necessarily worrying about the future or future eligibility for Ashton. So I think that's interesting. Once again, I'd be surprised if we didn't see Jackson Arnold pretty consistently for the rest of the season, but we'll take that for what it's worth. If you get to where there's 4 games left and you want to see what Ashton can do, I get it, but that's where we're at. That's where we're at. As far as the rest of the question, when he's asked about personnel, obviously center is a big deal. And he gave Cale Ellis plenty of credit, which he is worth. He deserves all of that credit. I thought he was fantastic with proper context as far as, what he was able to do. The little bit against Oklahoma that we saw when Connor missed a few plays. And then what we saw in the second half. Was he perfect? No. But as far as a 17-year-old SEC center, I thought he was solid. But he did mention a few other possibilities. Obviously, Cale Ellis is going to get snaps. He said Mason Murphy is going to get some snaps at center. Of course, he's been at right tackle for Auburn. And if they do that, they would put Too Tall at tackle. So I thought that was interesting. And then he also mentioned Dylan Cinda will be ready. So there's that. There's that. As far as his opening presser, there was a lot of this on Twitter, and a lot of people were just kind of posting the picture and giving context and then saying, hey, take this for what it's worth. But he did the presser from a podium and not from a table this week. Changing it up, baby. Let's go. I thought that was interesting. And then his opening statement was all about how we can't linger on these losses, and then proceeded to linger on the losses a little bit. Say, hey, we can't linger, but our last 4 opponents have started 25-3 or whatever it is against, top 4 straight top 15 opponents. And then he did the whole, the fact that we're close in those games gives you hope that we're close to turning the corner. And he can't stop saying the whole, like, it's so close. We're so close in all of this. And I just think it's just really bad messaging, but he keeps doing it. He keeps doing it. I'm making sure on all the personnel changes were there. Oh, he did ask the question on, like, for Jackson Arnold, like, when you're looking at the quarterback position, do you question the consistency and just say, hey, for whatever reason, like, we're not winning? Do you put if Jackson Arnold can't give you the consistency, you just go with a spark, which would be a quarterback change. So that's something we've talked about here. And I think a lot of people have talked about that everywhere, but interesting that he said it for sure. Then Justin Hokanson, I think, asked the most interesting question of the press conference. I'm pretty sure it was Hoke, where you're seeing all of these athletics directors throughout college football, like, Norvell at FSU. A lot of people assumed that he was going to get fired. And you're seeing all these athletics directors come out and, like, give, this statement of support for their head coaches, saying, like, all right, we're not firing them. Y'all can quit talking about it. We've made the decision. We're sticking with them. And obviously Cohen has not done that for Freeze yet. And so Hoke asked Freeze, what would that mean? Do you want that? Is that something that you guys have talked about? Freeze said that they hadn't talked. Cohen and Freeze have not talked since the game on Saturday. And he said that kind of statement, it would be huge. And then he went back to we're too dang close to give up now. He wants a chance to fix it, which, he should want to fix it. I think that's the proper thing to want. But I thought that answer was interesting. Okay. As far as other things, he was asked about specific players pretty much for the rest of it. And we'll jump into what some of those things are and what they can mean moving forward for the Tigers next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. Right now, you can place your first $5 bet and get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Auburn currently a favorite in Fayetteville, 1.5-point favorite, according to our friends at FanDuel. Will that line move closer to the game? It might. I think it's correct right now. This is kind of where I would leave it, as Auburn is a slight favorite, but there might be money on Arkansas in this one. I'm genuinely fascinated. So head over to FanDuel.com today to download the free FanDuel app. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Quo. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo. Formerly Open Phone, it's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it's so important. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that stays connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying around two phones. Love that. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That is QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with other services, you can port them over for free. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Few other things about the receivers specifically. Mike G, towards the end of the presser, asked about the concern with drops with the wide receivers. Like, obviously these guys are talented, but the drop skis, they're not going away. And obviously Cam Coleman had a big one, and he was not the only pass catcher that had a drop on Saturday. And that's kind of been the case for a big chunk of the season, even dating back to when Hugh Freeze has gotten here. That's been an issue. And I mean, that's not terribly uncommon in college football, but with the caliber of pass catchers that Auburn has right now, that should not be a thing at this point. And so I thought that was interesting. And he talked about how, like, it's hard to lay into a kid who, cares, and that they're capable of doing that. And so I don't really know what he is supposed to, like, you can't take Cam Coleman out because he dropped it. So I'm not entirely sure what he's supposed to do, but I mean, his response essentially was like, yeah, we're going to put him on the jug machines, which, if you don't know, that's the thing you put a football in and, like, launches it out and you can catch it, like, goes to the same spot every time. So we'll see. We'll see if we see improvement there. Then he was asked about Perry Thompson and his development because he's had a good past 2 games. I said this on the last few shows that we've done since the end of the game, but it's been a lot of, there were a lot of individual performances that I was impressed with, and I wanted Auburn to win so bad for several reasons. One of them, obviously, was to give love to some of these individual performers that we haven't really been able to do because we've been talking about the ramifications of the loss. Like Perry Thompson's been fantastic over the last few games. He was great against Missouri. Obviously was effective in the receiving game, but as a run blocker downfield, a blocker for his teammates, he was awesome. That stuff doesn't really show up in the stat sheet, but a lot of the success that Jeremiah Cobb has had, and then I think he blocked for Malcolm on his 2 rush attempts. Like Perry's been great. So I love that Hugh was asked about that, and he talked about calling his uncle and saying how proud he is of Perry and all that. And I think they've done a good job with Perry from a development standpoint. It's just not, I don't know. This is not enough, sadly. Sadly, it's not enough. He was asked about Alex McPherson missing kicks, and Alex McPherson believes in Alex McPherson is what he said. And of course, he said, I believe in Alex McPherson. So take that for what that's worth. And then I think it was Dan Peck that asked about play calling and, how much of the offensive struggles are on play calling versus the execution. And of course, Freeze feels like the play calls are fine. I mean, that should surprise no one. He's like, I think we're calling plays that they should be able to handle. He did talk about like on 3rd and long, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. Actually, I think is what he said was 3rd and 12. Like you don't love those situations and how many play calls are designed for that. But also he talked about the matchup with Missouri specifically about how they really respected their 2 edge rushers and defensive ends. So take that for what it's worth. So all in all, I thought the most interesting, I'm making sure I got went over all the stuff that I wrote down that I thought was interesting. Yeah. So the most interesting things to me were the athletic director's statement of support, how he said like he would love for Cohen to do that, that it would mean a ton or it'd be huge was his direct quote. And then questions about quarterback, which I mean, I was about to say he didn't like come out and say that it'd be Jackson, but he did say like it will probably be Jackson. So I'll stay on for like 2 more minutes. I got to go pick up my child from school. But if anybody has any questions or comments about the presser or just things in general, I will try to grab them over the next few minutes. Obviously, the program does not feel like it's in a good place. I do get the feeling that Freeze wants to be here from what we just saw, which is good. And I think that has been questioned by the fan base. Like, I do think he wants to be here. Him talking about how he, they're close and he wants to fix it. I did see some passion from that. I see asking, what about the whole podium thing? It's very strange, mentioned a second ago, but like, yeah, these are normally done. He's sitting at a table and they brought out a podium this time. I don't know what you do with that. No clue. It's very, very strange for sure. But we're so close. There's a lot of people in the live chat say we are so close. Saw it on Twitter and I've stolen it. And I wish I could give credit to who I originally saw it, but you can't spell lose. Like you can't spell close without lose. And that's kind of where we've been at. Taylor asked, do you think a decision has already been made and John Cohen is waiting to announce it? Possibly. That's certainly, possibly the case. If that were the case, you'd have to ask questions about like the timing. What benefits do you get for not being public about it and going ahead and doing it? Or, have those conversations happen behind closed doors? Have they happened with Freeze based off of how Freeze acted today or responded to that question? It doesn't seem like Freeze was part of those conversations if they happened, but I think that's always possible. And you have to think that Cohen is feeling some of the heat, and he knows that he will feel a ton of heat if a decision is not made. Or maybe he's given him a chance to turn things around because maybe, I'm not saying I entirely agree with this, but maybe Freeze is right and they are close. And when they're not playing against a top 15 team, they'll win. I don't know. We'll see. We'll get a good example of that this weekend because Arkansas is not a top 15 team. I do hate the matchup, though. I hate it. I think Arkansas matches up really well against Auburn. So take that for what it's worth. Matt asked, does an Arkansas win save him? Seems dumb for that one game to keep him. If they're going to fire him, then do it. If not, then say you're not. I think with all these other athletic directors publicly getting behind their head coaches that they're keeping, I think the fact that Cohen has not done that yet is telling. We also may see that in the coming days. If I had to guess, you can look at the timing of it, and I know a lot of y'all disagree with this. I don't love firing coaches with this much time left in the season for a few different reasons. There's pros and cons to it, 100%. From a timing standpoint, you've got Arkansas and Vandy, then a bye week. I think that would make sense if you're going to do it. And do you already have that decision made regardless of the outcome of those games, right? Like we saw Billy Napier get fired after a win against Mississippi State. What a fluky win. What a crazy ending to that game. But it happens. It happens. So could that be part of it? So great questions, guys. I've got to run. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for a few minutes on this bonus reaction edition of Locked On Auburn about what Hugh Freeze said at his Monday presser. Please like the video. Please subscribe, and we will see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.